So, like a lot of people of my generation, I grew up watching Cartoon Network, and by extension, I grew up watching Adult Swim. And it's through Adult Swim and Cartoon Network that I was introduced to anime. And one of the most influential and inspiring anime series that I've ever seen, at the ripe old age of about 11 or 12, late night on Adult Swim, is Fooly Cooly. For those who don't know, Fooly Cooly is a 6-episode OVA series that was produced in Japan in 1999. It is very creative, it's very free-flowing, it tells a very complex story, seemingly through a very nonsensical one, but actually has quite the plot flowing through it. There's a lot of strange and surreal moments in the series. But the main premise is a young boy named Noda who lives in the community of Mabase, a little outskirts town, where his life is very unexciting. Everything is routine and boring, predictable. He has no patience or use for adults. He thinks they're all stupid and immature and refusing to grow up, even though he himself is childishly holding on to these ideas of what constitutes adulthood. One day, things get turned upside down when this mysterious girl named Haruko shows up and then proceeds to hit him over the head with a bass guitar, a vintage 4001 Rickenbacker to be exact, and things get steadily stranger and surreal from there. A robot comes out of his head, moves into his house. Haruko moves into his house as a live-in maid. His father, who is a complete pervert and jackass, loves this arrangement. His older brother has left for America to play baseball, and his older girlfriend is still hanging around Noda and basically using him as a security blanket to hold on to some trace of her brother while still manipulating him by doing things like kissing him and such. The series overall, despite its exaggerated comedy, its odd story, and its really weird turns as far as visuals and direction go, is about growing up. It's about finding maturity. It's about learning to accept and become oneself. I say all this because, just as influential as the anime series Fooly Cooly has been to me, I was also heavily inspired as a writer, and as well as some of the ideas for stories and such as I had, by the 2-volume manga adaptation. And that's what I want to talk about today, guys. Shortly after the Fooly Cooly anime series, a doujinshi manga was written and illustrated by Hajime Ueda, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So, the manga takes a very different approach to the story of FLCL, or Fooly Cooly. Fooly Cooly, the anime, is very bright, vibrant, fast-moving, and fast-paced. The manga has a black and white, has a very ragged kind of drawn style, and has a more slowed-down, dreamlike pace. The anime is dreamlike, but in a very fast-motion, cartoony, slapstick, wham-slam, screwball kind of way. The manga, while still surreal and still keeping the basic story, changes some of the story elements, rewrites a lot of things, especially significant things in the climax and ending, but also tones down the flow of it. The manga has a very relaxed, languid, dreamlike pace. And I actually, honestly, as much as I love the anime, and I've seen it literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, that is not an exaggeration. I've read the manga a lot more. It's actually one of my favorite just books of all time. I consider it one volume. I literally read this manga more than any other manga for sure, more than any other comic for sure, and honestly, probably a lot more than any other novel I've read. I like it that much. And the thing is, I want to talk about that primarily, but for those not familiar with the story, I felt it was best to start with the anime. And even so, if you do want to read the manga, I actually highly recommend watching the anime as well. I actually would recommend watching it first to get you an idea of kind of the source material, then reading the 2-volume manga to give you the contrast and the comparisons, because they are two vastly different approaches to the same story. So things I want to talk about in the manga. One has an extremely unique art style, and I'm actually going to show you some pages to show you what I'm talking about. Hang on. It has a very drawn, very minimalist, ragged kind of stripped down style. Which is distinctive. Hajime Ueda has a very distinct style, and he said some other manga, and it looks like that. It changes sort of the story elements from the series, as I said. There's things that are significantly rewritten. This manga is actually a lot darker. It's less funny. It's more serious. I mean, there is humor in the manga, and FLCL for sure definitely is a comedy through and through. Even the manga is still a comedy. It's just a very more serious, darker comedy. For example, in the manga, Noda's grandfather and a fellow war veteran from World War II commit suicide. In the anime, Noda swings a baseball bat and kills what he thinks is his father, but it turns out it's okay. It was only a robot replica. In the manga, Noda fucking kills his father, straight up. And it's graphically illustrated, like a full page layout, and there's like blood splatter across the page. It's in black and white, so it's like just ink splatter. Still, though, he literally kills his father. That's a drastic fucking change, and a lot darker one to go into. Haruko is more, I would say her motives are a lot different. In the manga, in the anime, she's looking for a very powerful entity that's really not talked about much, known as Atomisk, who is a very, very powerful, godlike being. In the manga, her motives are, I think, the same, but more abstract. I think in the manga she's more just kind of a fugitive. Also, in the manga, Haruko tries to at one point kill Mamimi, Noda's brother's older girlfriend, after sleeping with her, which is a very different turn from the anime. So you kind of get a sense of what I'm talking about here. It's a very dark story. And I think I gravitated to both the anime and the manga because it spoke to me when I was younger. Because I myself felt alone, I felt isolated, I felt like everybody around me was an idiot, I felt like I was struggling to find myself. But also just the sheer imagination, the odd comedy, the bizarre visuals and nonlinear, strange storytelling spoke to me. And it was unlike anything else I'd ever seen. Even now, the both manga and the anime are unlike anything else I've ever seen. And I say that as someone who is a lot more familiar with anime and a lot more familiar with manga than I was at the time I watched and read them. In short, they're both very unique creations. Very different from each other, but that kind of keeps in the spirit of FLCL. FLCL, the anime, changes visual styles within an episode. Animation styles may roughly change, we'll go through 4 different styles of animation. Visuals will just be thrown out there with no regard or rhyme or reason. It's as long as it just looks cool. And that's kind of the primary idea behind FLCL. They wanted to break the rules of convention. They wanted to break the rules of what anime was and push the possibilities of what anime could be. And they succeeded brilliantly at it. It has a slapdash, haphazard, seemingly presentation, but I feel is actually very cleverly done. At one point, the anime even has a scene that replicates and parodies the style of South Park as animation. Who does that? Not to mention referencing numerous things that I feel like a lot of audiences wouldn't get. So, it's full of cultural references, it's full of puns, it's full of clever sight gags. In the anime, there's even a scene where the animation style takes the form of a manga, which actually looks kind of similar to the FLCL manga itself. It does it twice in the series too. I mean, it's just very good. I can't get over it. You know, it's just such a good show. And it's such an interesting, creative approach to do it that way. And the manga follows through in that same spirit. The manga, was like, that did something completely different with its visuals. Let's do something completely different with our visuals. So that's the whole idea and the whole point of FLCL. Story of maturity and creativity, but also done it in its own don't give a fuck style. And I love it for that. And I love the manga for that as well. I also love the manga creator was just basically like, I'm going to take the bare bones theory here, and I'm going to just do what I want with it. And it works. Succeeds brilliantly on all levels, and I fucking love it. So if you're interested in finding the manga, this is the original versions published by, original English versions, I should say, published by Tokyo Pop. They're not as widely available to find anymore. I found these online through some used bookstores. However, Dark Horse Comics has got our back. They republished the entire series in a newest volume. It's the complete series in one volume, with some additional artwork and additional pages. There's been a little bit of rewriting in the dialogue and such. I read this one a lot, but I prefer the original. That's just because I'm more familiar with it. And this one rewrites some things that they get the general point across, and they're not wildly different in its rewrites.